Welcome back to the channel, you kooks. Today we have a step-by-step time-lapse how to build a van tutorial video. So usually on most of our van conversions we will film a time-lapse and put it all together at the end. But this time I figured I would put a little commentary on top of it, kind of just talking about each step, how we do it, and kind of the process to build your own van. If you like this content, give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe, and also check out our Kookz van conversion masterclass at vankookz.com. The first step in any van conversion is going to be gutting out your van. More than likely this van had a past life, so taking out all the lights, the shelves. This van was an Amazon delivery van before we had it, so we had to remove all the lighting, all the electrical wires, and everything else. Next, you're going to want to do some body work. If your van had been through the ringer, you might have to remove some rust. These vans have a small little coating of paint on top of them. Sometimes we've done some extensive rust repair. Once the rust repair is all done, we then paint the van, painting the exterior as well as also painting the interior. So putting in the elbow grease here, getting this all done before the van is finished. You'll see in this comparison how much better it looks painted before when it was just a cargo van. If the van has some good extensive damage on the inside, you'll also want to paint the inside. We just use Raptor liner, sanding it all down, covering up all that exposed metal, and then remembering there are going to be areas of the van that are shown when it's all covered up. So painting those edges, all those door seams, everything in between there. Next up, you're going to be putting anything on the roof. We're going to be cutting all the holes and all that other stuff. So the first thing I was doing in this project was designing a solar panel rack for the Ford Transit van. If you have a Ford Transit van and you need a solar panel rack, we made a nice video. We have some plans available as well on our website. Once we got the solar panels all put together, we used a unistrut system. You're also going to want to cut the holes to run your wires down from the solar panel. And as I mentioned earlier, cutting those holes out for your roof fans. We had 2 roof vents in this van, so we installed one and then we installed the other. It's always nice to have all your holes cut. Also thinking of where you're going to put all your windows, cutting out all your windows. And then just making sure everything's fastened to the van, solar panels, vent fans, windows. You'll want all that installed before we move on to the next step, which will be insulation. So we used a variety of 3M Thinsulate as well as Reflectix for our insulation in the van. First off, this is a real easy job. You start with the Thinsulate. It's just a cut and paste job. So cutting out your shapes, pasting them into place using this 3M spray adhesive. Next, you're going to want to insulate your floor. Make sure it gets cleaned out nicely. We just use Reflectix in this case since I am tall. A polyiso board makes it so tall that I can't stand all the way up in the van. But I would recommend using something a little thicker if you are going to have the van in the winter. Once we fully wrap the van with the Reflectix vapor barrier, we then begin framing the van. If you're working on a Ford Transit, you can already probably have experienced that it's a quite bulletproof van, and getting some of the framing onto the van can be quite difficult. In the masterclass, some of our students have given us some great tips for this. We've also walked some students through the riv nuts process, so that's an option here. Here we're just fastening the framing to the walls with self-tapping screws, laying all the horizontal pieces first and then attaching all the vertical pieces. Next, we're going to run the wire for the van, so running all our wires to our switches, and everything essentially ends up in one place where our whole entire solar system will live. Next up, we cover it all up. We like to use a material known as Plastex for those lower sections and also the upper sections where you won't be seeing any of the walls. So cabinets cover the walls. Also keep in mind when you're framing your walls how the plywood or whatever wood you're going to use for your walls is going to go into place here. So we use a Revolution ply for the walls. You can get it at Lowe's. It's a thin little sheet of plywood. It looks really nice. Next, here in this video, we are adding our tongue and groove ceiling. So Ford Transit has a nice curve at the front of the van, makes this a little more difficult. Just making sure you have it nice and dialed before you cut all your pieces. So making sure you have a nice pattern and a template to follow. Making sure you keep all those templates from your doors, from your van when you gutted it. So holding on to all those pieces, you're going to need them because we're going to cover up all the doors here after we install the walls. In this video, I am just making a window frame. The framing out the windows can be pretty tricky in your van. So, this took us a little bit of time, but once we got all those, it helps having the door panels because then we didn't have to make an additional template. We installed both of them onto the van. Once the walls were in place, it was time to start kind of configuring the van's layout and also where the batteries and the water tanks are going to be. I counteracted the weight of the batteries with a 35-gallon water tank on the other side. I added all the fittings onto the water tank because essentially once it was in place, it was going to be hidden. So I made sure to get all the fittings on there. Next, we're going to set up our battery bank. We wired our batteries in parallel here. So just connecting all the parallel terminals, all the negative terminals and all the positive terminals together, and then hooking them all up to a bus bar. From here, we started to install our electrical system. So just a rough install. We never really get it fully up and running until we are ready. So just getting everything into place here, wiring all the components, and then making sure we hook up those solar panels last. Everything in the van is going to be kind of step by step. You might do some steps, you might have to come back, do some steps later. Building upper cabinets is much easier to do in the first steps because then you'll be able to just kind of run those cabinets long and you won't be avoiding all your other furniture. So we start with the face frame for the upper cabinets. We then go through and make our templates. We start with cardboard. We put everything onto a masonite type board or any scrap wood we have laying around. And then once we're ready, we finally put those templates onto our hardwood. We used a knotty alder pine, I believe, here to make all of our inserts. So once those templates look well, we just pin nailed all the inserts in and we started installing the cabinets, installing the headers in the back to keep them attached, also putting on a base to the cabinets. If you're working on a Ford Transit, you'll note that front curve is a pretty difficult thing to build an upper cabinet with. So this step did definitely take us a little longer, just making sure you're always making templates for every step of the way. And then once you kind of get one thing up, you can then start putting other parts together. So we kind of did this in multi-steps. We started with the upper cabinets, and then we realized that we couldn't build the upper cabinets on the other side until we installed our tall wardrobe. Once the wardrobe was in place, we could then install our upper cabinets in the back. Once again, we start with the face frames. We add a kicker on the wall to hold them out to the desired depth, and then we use all those cardboard templates to make the bottoms and to make the sides. This cabinet was kind of cool. We just used elastic bands instead of doors, so we could just shove in clothes in packing cubes. It actually turned out looking really nice. So we came back to the bed now. The bed kind of started in a few sections. We started on it early and then we realized it was just going to be in the way once we started building upper cabinets. So we cut a bunch of pieces for the bed first, and then we came back and we put the bed together. We worked on a more basic design for the bed here. It's actually surprising how difficult building a bed can be in the van. It's got to be right, it's got to be perfect. So you're going to have many conversations with your partner. You're going to take many measurements here, and you're just going to make sure everything's dialed in because you will be sleeping on this bed every night, and you will be surprised that building a comfortable bed is actually a craft. So we used a carpet here to cover up all the plywood so you could see it from the inside. It would look nice and finished. And then essentially we just used 3 pieces of plywood here, and then 2 on the sides and 1 in the front. We had to get some other furniture in place before we finally installed the bed. So here we are building our couch that is going to just be a nice storage unit underneath it. And as you get better, you might be able to build some stuff inside your garage, inside your shop, and then transfer it into the van. So this this couch had storage both on the back and on the seat, and we just put a nice piano hinge on it. Like I said, things kind of go in steps. We couldn't really get the bed installed until we got all of our solar parts. So I was waiting on a circuit box from Midnight Solar. where I was putting in two 15 amp breakers for my AC outlets. So I'm just running the AC power from this Ames power inverter, and I'm running it into the Midnight Solar box where the breakers are, and then they run to two different AC outlets. Once all the electrical was in place, we could get back to finishing the bed. Once again, many conversations, many measurements, making sure everything's dialed. We wanted to keep the batteries accessible, so we created large holes that weren't going to have any doors or drawers on them, large openings. And then that way we could open up the base of these cabinets and get to the batteries and swap them out or change anything in the future, because we will need to swap batteries out at some point. So we covered the batteries up, got everything looking nice, wrapped everything with that nice cheap Home Depot carpet, added our bed slats to the bed, and it came out really nice. We finished the inside with a nice waterproof mat, and then we fabricated a nice angle iron to kind of hold the mat in place and give it a really nice clean look. Next up, we're going to move on to building more cabinets. So we're going to start with those lower kitchen cabinets here. That we like to have our accessories before we build the cabinets, just to make sure everything fits perfectly, that the doors open correctly, and that it's just a nice snug fit in there. So we had our fridge, we added it in there, and then we're back to the template game, making templates, cutting those templates onto our scrap wood, and then cutting them onto our hardwood. We also had access to a band sander. That's what we just showed there. This really helps us match the curve of the van. And then back to cabinet construction, we're just adding in the bump stops for our drawer sliders. So we put in about 7 drawers in these cabinets here. And then we're on to the other side. So you can see here, I got the cardboard. I'm taking the cardboard, I'm putting it onto scrap wood. I'm taking it into the van. Once it matches perfectly, using the band saw and the band sander to get everything dialed, I then transfer it onto my knotty alder plywood. Since the plywood's expensive, you want to get it right, you want to get it perfect. So we'll just put one of these cabinets together, these base cabinets, just starting with some headers and some front supports. This just is going to hold everything together, and then we kind of just cut it in sheets using the plywood as a nice, strong support on each side, and then we just attach the back to it. And this is a real easy way to build cabinets. I've seen people in van conversions build them so many different funny ways, but we go through step by step how to build cabinets for your van in our master class. Next, we're building drawers. Another thing we go over in the master class. We're lucky enough to have a table saw here and kind of rip all these drawers to a perfect size that we need. But we're going to show you how, in that master class, how to build these drawers, how a drawer is assembled, how to build a professional drawer that looks nice, and using the right materials as well. So we assemble all the drawers. This is kind of a fun step to watch in a time lapse. Danny and myself just busting all these drawers out. We built them with a dado edge, so we just slid the bottoms in place, got them all squared. Once the drawers are done, we then work on the face frames. Face frames are going to cover up the cabinets. They're going to cover all those rough plywood edges, and they're going to give them a nice professional look. Building cabinets this way has been done for a very long time. So in the masterclass, you'll learn how to build professional cabinets that not only work in your van, they'll also transfer to real life. So we're using a Kreg jig here. Kreg jig's a great tool for a van conversion. It helps us connect those boards at an angle, nice and clean, and most importantly, with a strong positive connection. Once the face frames are getting close, we start to get them into the van, make sure we have them all dialed, make sure the drawers will open, make sure the doors will open. Once we got them finished, we just pin nail them in. We're just using a brad nail gun for most of the nailing in the van, and maybe a little touch of wood glue as well on those face frames. So we had a few conversations, a whole bunch of measurements to work on our door and drawer fronts. We wanted all the grain to match up, so this took quite a bit of planning, quite a bit of measuring to make sure that once we got all those doors, it looked like just one continuous sheet of plywood. Once the doors are all cut, here we're just adding edge banding to the edges of the drawers to make them look nice, to take away that plywood edge, and just to give them a nice professional finish, because most of this van we were doing unpainted because the client actually wanted to paint it. We're getting pretty close. We're working on countertops here. We made a template for the countertops to make sure they fit perfect because the van does curve from front to back and side to side, so you will have to match that cabinet perfect. Then we install all the hinges onto the doors, and then we install all the doors into the van, remembering that we had that nice cohesive look that looked like just one long sheet of plywood. And it came out amazing. This has definitely been one of our most fancy, most professional vans that we've built, with those nice professional drawers and all those nice seams that line up. So here we're just installing the drawers, installing the door fronts, and lastly, we're gonna just install our sink and all our plumbing. So we just cut a hole in our butcher block. We added our sink into place. It's a lot easier to have the sink all put together before you install it into your van, because you're gonna be working in a tight space and it's gonna be difficult to get back there and do all that plumbing in this small area. So here it is, the finished van. We think it came out amazing. We finished it in about 7 weeks, which is a record for us, I think, because we didn't have to paint it. So we sent it off to the customer, and actually she painted it, and we've seen it since, and it looks amazing. Here's one final shot of it. And if this was helpful content to you, we have a van build, van conversion masterclass on our website, www.vankookz.com. We break down every step of the van conversion. We have helpful videos, and most importantly, we have live interactive live calls a couple times a month. So if you're interested, check it out, vankookz.com. And thanks for watching, you Kookz. And like and subscribe if you thought this content was good and helpful. And we will see you guys on the flip side. And if you liked it, also just checking out some of our other videos. Thanks for watching.